Good evening. Good evening. I got to learn how to figure out how this microphone works. Thank you, Pastor, for opening up your church for this event. It occurred because someone called me and said, you know something, we ought to have a community meeting. And I thought, oh, she's right. So that led to coming here to the Methodist Temple and giving us an opportunity tonight to talk about an issue. I talked in this place in 2002 around the issue of going into Iraq. And it seems sort of eerie to me in a way to be talking here tonight about a similar kind of issue. We hear that there is a proposal that we go in to have a limited strike in Syria to show the world that we as Americans are unaccepting of the idea of the use of chemical weapons. And that the world must know that that's not a civil way to relate to one another in war or anything else. And yet, the consequences of a limited strike, I think, and the wider war that may come from that, are troubling a lot of us. Murphy's Law of unintended consequences is well known. And often when things start off in a certain direction, they wind up in another. You may remember Iraq, we were going to be in and out in 60 days. And lo and behold, 10 years later, we were still enmeshed. And I think that for someone like me who represents 700,000 people like you, it is a heavy responsibility to try and decide what one ought to do. And for that reason, I wanted to have this meeting, and I appreciate all of your coming. The President made his proposal several weeks ago after the events that occurred in Damascus suburbs, and was prepared, really, I believe, to go by himself. He thought that he, as the President, could make the decision and would move forward. And some of us immediately raised the issue, as we had done before with George Bush. You have to get authorization from the Congress to make this kind of step forward. After a few days of thinking about that, the President did decide that he would wait until he had approached the Congress and let the Congress take a vote on this issue. Now, Winston Churchill said that democracy is the worst form of government until you consider the alternatives. It's messy, it's loud, it's noisy, it's a lot of things, but it is developing a consensus among the people about what we as a people should do. And this is really, you're a part of that process in this issue now. Now, the Senate has voted, as you have seen, 10-7 in committee to authorize the President's moving forward. The original proposal made from the White House was a very wide, broad, sweeping one, somewhat like what we were asked early to vote on in Iraq. I remember very well when we came to that vote, there were 15 or so of us standing in the back of the hall. Only one person voted no. Barbara Lee voted no. But there were another 15 of us or so standing around saying, how am I going to explain when I go home that I voted no? I mean, we've been attacked in New York. Shouldn't we do something? And even though this seems like a very broad authorization for the President, we were back and forth about it. And that is where we are again. We know that there's something that we do not accept, a heinous act in Damascus, but the question is, what should you do about that? Now, my belief is that what will happen when we go back, I'm leaving tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, I'll be back in Washington, D.C. This week, the Senate will be dealing with this issue. They will be debating what has come out of committee on the floor of the Senate. There's possibilities for filibusters, there's possibilities for multiple amendments by various people who want either to go further, because there are certainly some people who think that the resolution that passed in the Senate is too narrow, and there are others who think that it ought to be even more narrow. So the possibility for amendments in the Senate are quite obvious. The week will quickly go by. There's Jewish high holidays beginning on sundown on Thursday, and so it'll be a short week. So it won't get done this week. Then we'll move to the next week. The Senate will either take its vote this week or next week early, and then the House will get down to making a decision about what we think about it. I made a suggestion. The President, his wife, his staff, Mr. Pete, I'm blocking on his name at the moment, the Chief of Staff, McDermott, he called for a meeting with the progressives, and we talked to him on the phone. There were about 30 of us talked to him on the phone, and said, we had a lot of feelings about this, and we didn't want this and this. I suggested to him that the President ought to go to the United Nations. On the 23rd of September, the United Nations, all the heads of state in the world congregate in New York City for the opening of the General Assembly. And I said, he should go, and he's certain of his case, and he's confident in it. He should make his presentation to the world, and we shall see how the world reacts to this. Because if you go on your own, unilaterally, it has no support from underneath. But if you have support from the world, or you have support from the Congress, you then have a basis on which to move forward, and it puts the President in a much stronger position. And I think that they are now considering this. The Saudis have even suggested that this be brought to the General Assembly. The argument about using diplomacy, because right now this issue is framed as we will either do an airstrike or nothing. People say, well, we can't do nothing. Well, is there anything else besides an airstrike? Yes, it's called diplomacy. Now, the argument the administration makes in that, and I've talked to Samantha Powers, and I've talked to a lot of people in the administration about this thing. They say, well, the Russians have killed everything in the United Nations. We can't get anything done there because they just stop everything. No, 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 veto, veto, veto. And the General Assembly does not have the power to authorize action. It only has the power to make a recommendation to the Security Council that such and such a thing be done. So, moving from the morass of the Security Council and moving to the floor of the General Assembly is really to get around the obstructionism of the Saudis. And it's my view that this is an issue that should be argued on the highest level. I think that we as a world have got things that trouble us all, and they must be resolved, and we say we believe in a democracy. We say that. But the question is whether we really want the people to decide what ought to happen. And that's really what's at issue here is, are the people going to have a say in what happens, or is it just going to be a few people at the very top who make the decisions and we move forward? And I personally am uncomfortable with that. I believe in a democracy. I believe that even though I have to listen to a lot of people, and I have to listen to some I don't agree with, or some I don't think are very smart, or whatever I think, I have to listen to them. Because as a representative of them, I have to know who the people are and what they're thinking about. And that's really the reason for having this meeting tonight. And I just say just one line, and I suppose I could say it later, but I could say it now. I'm leaning against voting for it. pretty strongly. The press immediately asks, well, is there any circumstance under which you would change your mind? Well, I'm a physician, and I know that you never know everything about a patient. You never know everything about a condition. And you keep gathering information because sometimes you're wrong. Sometimes you make a mistake. Sometimes you didn't pay attention. You didn't see something. I believe you have to keep an open mind until the time comes when we have to have a vote. We will have that vote probably, I would think, in the last week in September. And I'm really here tonight to let people tell me what they think about the options, what they think about limited strike options, whether they think it's in the national interest. There are all kinds of issues that have been raised. And people said, well, we're doing it for this reason, or we're doing it for that reason, or we're doing it in a national interest, or we're doing it because we have to make a statement, or we have a moral high ground. Or there's all kinds, and I'm really here to open the mic, and I think there's a mic someplace around here, and stand up, Jason. Jason's got a mic, and you can start walking down the aisle, and if people would like to make statements now, let me just say one thing about this. I hope that we in the House try to limit one another to 3 minutes, okay? I know you may have in mind to make 90 seconds, is that the one we're going to do? Okay. We would like you, if you want to ask a question, that's one thing, or if you just want to make a statement, either way. But please try and remember that there are a whole bunch of sweating people